Hey everybody, this is Perch. We're looking at DC in January 2021, and this is kind of just a way to think about everything that DC is publishing. Here's what their lineup looks like when we're talking about the month of January. I'm going to go through the solicitations as well for you here probably in a day or two, but in general, this is how it breaks out. So as you can see here, the bulk of what DC is going to produce in January is future state. Now, a lot of people often ask about collections. What's DC doing there? There's certainly still putting a decent amount of material out. If you look at it by the numbers, we're going to have 25 future state books, 9 black label books, 1 main and other DC book, and I kind of explain what that is a little bit later, and then 3 kind of kids YAs, like the Looney Tunes stuff that they do, and then finally 15 collections. So it looks like this. Now, to get a full sense of exactly how future state is impacting their publishing plan, this isn't necessarily the best way to look at it. It is almost half of everything they're producing, but you kind of have to take collections out to really get a clearer picture of what they're after. And so that's what we see here. So basically, future state, if you remove the collections, it represents 64% of everything that they're publishing, roughly 2/3 of everything they've got. Black label represents the other kind of big chunk there, which is still 23%. And so if you take a step back from it, there's a lot of people who are kind of tepid, I would say, on future state. Certainly a lot of people who are excited by it, but an equal number who are not terribly engaged by it. And I think the question they've been asking themselves is DC as I know it going away? What about these titles that I've really enjoyed? Are those vanishing? And the answer is no. If they're black label books, they are still continuing, and there's no sign that anything is changing there. And then in future state, it is 2 months. This is January and February. But I think that this picture you're looking at right now is actually pretty interesting if you think about DC post future state, running into 2021. What's it going to look like? I think it's going to look a lot like this. I expect the kind of main and other DC to get then folded into the mix. But it seems like about a quarter of what DC publishes is going to be black label. About, the majority is going to be their DC, their primary line. Then you're going to get about a 10% kids YA run over time. Now, I expect that to grow. In fact, I would be completely unsurprised if 1 year from now we see about 25% black label, 25% kids YA, and 50% kind of DC proper or the DC universe. I suspect that is where we're heading. That's what it's going to look like. But another way to kind of look at this is the cost. So if you look at where DC is migrating, if you're old enough to remember the holding the line at $2.99, which was less than 10 years ago, but it's funny to think about it that way. Where is DC at right now with cost? Well, they have clearly migrated to $3.99 as their primary price point. But some interesting or troubling, depending on how you want to look at it, developments on the horizon. If you look at this chart a different way, what you'll see is about 50% of their books are priced at $3.99, and about 50% are higher than that, with the exception of one title, to the point that it's a rounding error. But about half of DC's books are migrating up in price. And in a moment, when we look at future state just by itself, there is an indication of wanting to push that number up higher. Not a big surprise. I think you are seeing a world where $5.99, $6.99, $7.99 is where DC wants to keep about a third of their line, maybe even a little bit more. And of course, this is taking out collections, which skews that number terribly, but this is kind of where DC is going from a price perspective. You see definitely a push up in cost. And if you did buy all the DC titles, and I know nobody would actually do this, but if you did want to buy everything that DC produced in January, not including collections, you're spending just under $200. That's the footprint DC is taking on your wallet. But this also indicates, if you're, again, doing the math, it's definitely a slimmed down line. We have basically under 40 titles. You've got, I think, 39 books that DC is producing in January. And this is their total lineup. If you remember, during the New 52, they were publishing 52 books, and that was where they're holding. So you're really talking about 13 books have been removed since that time frame. So if we look outside of Black Label and everything else, what does that look like? Which gives us, I think, a clear picture of where DC is going in 2021. we look at DC Future State. So what's DC Future State going to cost you? If you decide to go all in on Future State, it's going to cost you $125 for the month of January. We've got 15 books priced at $3.99, 7 at $5.99, and 3 at $7.99. And there's at least there's some missing titles here. I just want to throw out things like the Generation Shattered book. The way they did the solicitations is a little bit goofy, but basically this is more or less the picture you're looking at. And frankly, when you count in some of the other things they're doing, it's probably going to be a little closer to a 50-50 split between $3.99 and higher, just like the rest of their line. It is also interesting, by the way, if you look at DC and Future State and the books, the more legacy characters, meaning kind of the immortal Wonder Woman, the Clark Kent version of Superman, those books tend to be more at the $5.99 price point. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but if you are interested in the legacy characters, if you are interested in kind of the just the originals, if you will, those books tend to cost a little bit more. And the titles that are more experimental or feature the newer characters tend to be the ones that are $3.99. As a general rule, it's not all that way. The John Ridley Batman is certainly more expensive in the higher realm, but this is kind of how it's breaking down. And I think it tells us a little bit about where DC is going. It feels like DC is going to very firmly land in the $4.99 kind of on average price point going into 2021, or past this Future State when we're beyond it and moving into the other books. But it's interesting to look at the math this way and kind of to get a real sense of this is what it means to your wallet in the month of January. Now, just for the record, if we're looking about collections, that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. The collection pricing is a lot more dispersed. But there is also some interesting stories here as well. Really, the $24 to $30 price point is where a lot of the collections are kind of landing. You see a lot of experiments further up, but in a lot of cases, once we get to the $39 and higher, we're into omnibus territory and really kind of sizable books, hardcover, special edition, really kind of unique things. Generally speaking, if you look at the $20 to $30 kind of that realm, you're again at about 50% of the books are hitting in there for their collections. So what does all this mean? It's a bunch of numbers for you. You either care or you don't. Probably you don't, but I think a couple summary things you can draw from it, some of which we've already talked about. Definitely DC is inching up their prices. I think it's hard to deny that based on these numbers that are coming out. They're definitely all in on Future State, but they're not abandoning Black Label in the process. And their collections, I think they're still trying to find the sweet spot of what to charge and kind of how to produce these to really compete in a world that's increasingly crowded with manga and other things coming into it. DC's got to figure out a better model for their collections. And if you look at their collections, as we will when we go through the solicitations later, it's messy. It's a very, very messy picture, in my opinion, around kind of what they're offering and what their strategy is, and kind of it's not standard. The sizing is all over the place. The price is all over the place. And if you think about a world where more new comic readers may be coming in a collection world, not monthlies, this is an area where I think DC has some significant weakness, because it's very all over the place what they're doing there. So anyway, interesting way of, feel free to go back and kind of look at how some of this stuff is breaking out. They're taking a big bet with Future State, but like I said in previous videos, a lot of that really seems to have to do with the fact that they're kind of parceling out their, when they're going to publish and what, and really all eyes are on March. And I think March, what we're seeing here kind of tells us an interesting story. But there you go. So that's DC in January, kind of by the numbers, what you will spend, what it will cost. Hope this was valuable to you, or at least interesting talking points that you can now take and do what you want with them. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Send me an email, follow me on social media, whatever you like. But most importantly, thanks for listening.